The phone sits face down on the passenger seat, screen dark, the way it sits in 100,000 cars right now. You nudge it back from the edge, the way you'd straighten a placemat. Then the beam of the torch hits the glass. Then the officer, leaning toward the window, easy as a neighbour. I'm going to need you to unlock that for me. Here's what almost nobody in this country knows. There's no rule in Australia that makes your passcode safer than your own face. That split is American, and it doesn't exist here. What does exist is four legal doors that can force a phone open. And standing at that curb, none of them may have opened yet. This sentence can't stop an order once one's genuinely been made. What it can stop is you handing over access before anybody's earned the right to ask. Four doors, one phone, and one man stopped near Salisbury, South Australia, in August 2018, who fought this all the way to the High Court and lost. Start with what you owe, because none of that part is optional. In New South Wales, if a proper trigger fires, police reasonably suspect you've committed an offence or believe you can assist with an indictable one. You give your name and your address. That sits in sections 11 to 14 of LEPRA. You stop when you're directed to stop. You follow lawful directions. And if that phone is lawfully seized under a warrant or a search power, you hand the device over. You don't hide it. You don't wipe it. You don't delete a single message, because tampering with evidence carries serious consequences everywhere in this country. And it's the one mistake that turns a bad night into a much longer one. Do all of that fully, politely, hands where they can be seen. Now, the part almost nobody has ever been told. Nothing in that list is your passcode. There's no general power in Australia for an officer at a curb to make you unlock a phone just because they'd like to look inside it. No order, no obligation. So let's be honest about what you came here for. Here's what this sentence cannot do. It cannot stop a court order once one's actually been made. Nothing you say changes that. What it does is make sure you're never the one who hands over access before anybody's actually required to give it. But there are four doors that change all of that in an afternoon. Four doors. Only four. And each one is a compulsion instrument. A document made by a judicial officer that turns a request into a legal obligation with a criminal penalty behind it. Door one is the New South Wales order, a digital evidence access order, sitting in Division 4A of LEPRA, switched on the 1st of February 2023. It's warrant linked. A police officer doesn't hand it out at the window, it's applied for and it's issued. Door 2 is the Commonwealth Order, Section 3 LA of the Crimes Act 1914. Same shape. Attached to a search warrant made by a judicial officer, requiring a specified person to provide information or assistance to get into a device. Door 3 is Queensland, an order under sections 154 and 154A of the Police Powers and Responsibilities Act, again tied to a warrant. Door 4 is Victoria, an order under section 465AA of the Crimes Act made on application to the Magistrates Court. Other Australian jurisdictions run their own versions of the same idea. Similar order regimes exist elsewhere, and this video won't quote section numbers it can't stand behind. And before anyone starts in the comments, there are no magic words. Anyone selling you a script that makes police disappear is selling you a worse night than the one you're already having. What follows isn't a spell, it's a position. Because one of these doors is about to open on a man sitting in a car in South Australia, 24th of August 2018. A search warrant is issued under Section 3E of the Crimes Act, Commonwealth Power, Australian Federal Police. An investigation into money laundering and proceeds of crime, not drugs. Say that plainly, because the details of the offence aren't the point of this story. The point is what happened to the hardware. 27th of August. Daniel Luppino is driving near Salisbury, South Australia, when officers stop him and execute that warrant. Phones come out. A laptop comes out. Among the devices seized is a gold Samsung phone. They ask him for the PIN. He says, no comment. That's it? That's the whole exchange that the record preserves. And it's worth sitting with because it's the most ordinary 2 words in the English language. No speech about rights, no argument on the roadside, no lecture about warrants delivered through a car window. Just a man declining to supply something nobody had yet obtained an order requiring him to supply. And in that moment, on that day, he was entirely within his rights. Seizure and compulsion are 2 different things. They could take the phone. Taking a phone doesn't open it. Understand what a locked device is legally. It isn't a locked room they can force. It's a locked room where the only key exists inside your head. And the law has to go and get permission before it can reach in there. 2 days later, that permission arrived. And it arrived as something he couldn't simply decline. But before we get there, name the thing you're already thinking. Because you are. Won't declining make me look guilty? Won't the officer write it down? Won't a magistrate one day hear that I wouldn't hand over my phone and quietly assume the worst? Answer it straight. Guilt is evidence. It isn't a tone of voice. In New South Wales and the other states running the Uniform Evidence Law, Section 89 of the Evidence Act means that generally an inference of guilt can't be drawn from your failure to answer questions during official questioning. Silence isn't a confession with better manners. And this is where the doctrine gets clean. Before an order exists, you're not refusing an order. There's nothing to refuse. You're declining to volunteer assistance nobody's yet entitled to. Those are legally different acts, and only one of them is an offence. This is for you especially if you were raised to be helpful. If your instinct at any counter, any front desk, any window is to make the other person's job easier, that instinct has served you well your whole life. It's the single most expensive habit at a police stop because the machinery on the other side of the window is built to receive exactly what you're built to give. So the phone stays face down on the seat. That isn't defiance. It isn't guilt. It's the law doing what the law does. 30th of August, 2018, 3 days after the stop, the AFP goes back to court and an order is granted under Section 3LA, made without Luppino there, ex parte, requiring him to provide the information needed to get into the devices. Now the ground has shifted completely. Door 2 is open. This is no longer a request from a person. It's a requirement from a court. Asked again, he says, don't know it. Nah. And then he does the thing this channel will tell you to do every time. He takes the fight to the venue where fights are actually won. He challenges the order in court. In 2019, in the federal court, he wins. The order is held invalid. For a while, that looks like the end of it. Then in 2021, the full court of the federal court allows the AFP's appeal. The first instance result is gone. He seeks special leave to the High Court of Australia and the High Court refuses it with costs. So here's the outcome stated flat because it's the whole lesson. He won round 1. He lost everything after it. And the power to compel a phone password under Section 3LA stands today as good law in this country. 2 courts, an appellate bench, and a High Court refusal, all triggered by one gold Samsung phone taken from a car near Salisbury, which raises the only question that matters once a door like that swings open. What does it actually cost to say no to one? In New South Wales, refusing to comply with a digital evidence access order without a reasonable excuse, that's Section 76 AO of LEPRA, carries 100 penalty units, $11,000, and up to 5 years imprisonment. Read the second half again, 5 years. Not a fine you argue about at a registry counter. Prison for not saying a number out loud. The Commonwealth version, Section 3LA, sits in the same range. Up to 5 years imprisonment, 300 penalty units. That's the door that opened on Luppino. So look back at what that man was actually standing in. 3 days earlier, he'd said no comment and cost himself nothing at all. Not a fine, not an hour, not a charge. Same phone, same PIN, same 2 words. And once that order landed, those same 2 words carried years behind them. Nothing about him changed. Nothing about the device changed. A piece of paper changed. And that was enough to move him from a man exercising a right to a man exposed to a prison term. And the ordinary defence people reach for, that unlocking it would incriminate them, isn't the escape hatch you'd assume. These provisions are drafted precisely to cut through that. So the distinction this entire video runs on is not a small technical one. For an order, nothing owed. Refusal free, no penalty exists to apply. After a validly made order, full compulsion, criminal exposure, years, which is exactly why the fatal mistake isn't refusing. It's volunteering in the gap before anybody had to ask properly at all. Now the correction, because most Australians have absorbed the wrong country's law on this, and it's the part that will surprise you. You've heard it somewhere. Is a passcode never your face because they can make you look at your phone, but they can't make you speak. In American constitutional law, that argument runs on a privilege against self-incrimination, and American courts have argued about it for years. Those are foreign cases. They aren't authority here, and they never have been. There is no biometric carve-out in Australian statute. Every one of them is built around information or assistance, not passwords. Assistance. A finger placed on a sensor is assistance. A face turned toward a lens is assistance. At first instance in the Luppino litigation, the judge observed that drawing a line between a password and a fingerprint would be artificial. That reasoning was overturned on appeal. So it isn't the law, and I'm not offering it as law. But notice the direction Australian judicial thinking actually pointed. Not toward a protective split. Away from one. So why does this channel still tell you to use a passcode? Not for a legal reason. For a practical one, and the difference matters. A passcode requires your cooperation to exist in the world at all. It lives in your head and comes out only if you speak it. A face and a finger are attached to you, sitting right there, capable of being applied to a device with no cooperation from you whatsoever. That's not a stronger right. It's a slower path. And on a night when nobody's yet obtained an order, slow is everything. Which is exactly why the phone stays face down, not face up. We're close to the exact words now. Before them, the part half of you need. You've already done it. Maybe last year, maybe last month. Someone in uniform asked, and you thumbed it open and turned the screen toward them because it seemed easier than the alternative. And your heart went hard in your chest for reasons you couldn't name. You haven't blown it. Hear that properly. Unlocking a phone once doesn't create a standing obligation to keep unlocking it. It doesn't waive anything for next time. There's no legal doctrine in this country where cooperating at 8 o'clock means you've contracted to cooperate at 9. And this matters most for the people watching who are certain they've ruined something. The traveller who handed the code across at a gate last winter and has thought about it since. The parent who unlocked a phone in a driveway because their kid was in the car and they wanted it over. Neither of you signed anything. Neither of you gave up a right you still hold tonight. What you did once was a decision you made in a moment. It wasn't a contract, and nothing in Australian law turns it into one. You can stop mid conversation, mid sentence if you like. Actually, I'd rather not go any further with this without an order. That's it. No apology owed, no explanation required. An order that hasn't been made is still not made, no matter what you did 5 minutes ago. You can turn it back over. That's the whole beat. So here are the words in 3 short pieces, because nobody recalls a paragraph under a torch beam. Say it out loud once tonight in your own kitchen, so it's yours before you ever need it. I don't consent to unlocking this phone. Notice what each piece does. The first withholds the one thing they can't take. I'll comply with any lawful direction or order. The second kills the word uncooperative before it's written down. Is there a court order requiring me to do this? The third makes the encounter declare itself, request or requirement. Comply with your body, decline with your passcode. Now watch them push, because they will. Push 1, wrapped in convenience. If you've got nothing to hide, just unlock it. It'll take 2 seconds. You don't debate. Same words, same tone. I don't consent to unlocking this phone. I'll comply with any lawful direction or order. Is there a court order requiring me to do this? Push 2, wrapped in inevitability. We can always get an order anyway, so why make this difficult? The wipers tick. The phone stays face down, and you say it again, unchanged. I don't consent to unlocking this phone. I'll comply with any lawful direction or order. Is there a court order requiring me to do this? If an order is produced, the second sentence takes over, and it's 3 beats too. Can I see that order, please, in writing? If it's valid, I'll comply, exactly as required. I'm not refusing. I'm asking what's actually been made. Now, one venue where the 4 doors don't apply at all, and it isn't a 5th door. It's somewhere the doors were never built. An international airport. Australian Border Force officers can examine documents on a device under Section 186 of the Customs Act, and there's no warrant threshold and no reasonable suspicion gate standing in front of it. And yet, Border Force figures released under Freedom of Information show the same thing over and over. The overwhelming majority of travellers, around 94%, simply hand their passcode across, even though the Act doesn't contain a provision requiring them to speak it. 94 out of 100, not compelled, persuaded. Take 2 travellers, same gate, same hour. This is illustrative, not a case. The first is asked for her phone and gives it over with the code recited out loud before the sentence is finished. She's helpful, she's tired, she'd like to make her connection. The device goes to a back room and everything on it is in play. The second hands the device across too. Same physical compliance, no obstruction, nothing hidden, nothing deleted. But she says the words, I don't consent to unlocking this phone. I'll comply with any lawful direction or order. Is there a court order requiring me to do this? Then she asks what power is being exercised, and she writes down the answer. Same shock, same gate, one reflex apart. And if either of those examinations is ever tested later, only one of them is a search the other side has to justify from the ground up. Every one of these rules I've gathered in a book called Know Your Rights. Link in the description. Now the part that explains why any of this is worth the awkwardness at a window. An open phone isn't the screen you're looking at. Forensic extraction tools pull far more than the messages sitting in your inbox. Deleted material, location history, app data, the quiet background record of where you've been and who you spoke to and when. Years of your life on a bench, in a room you'll never see. Not the conversation you're worried about. All of them. Everything you've heard is why it never turns face up for anyone but you. So, what happens after? If the device is lawfully seized, it doesn't vanish. Ask for a property receipt before anyone walks away with it. That receipt is a small piece of paper that does a large job. In New South Wales, there are statutory rules about how long seized property can be retained and about applying to a court for its return. And applying is exactly what it sounds like. You're not begging a favour at a counter. You're asking a court to decide whether there's still a lawful reason to keep it. And if there isn't, it comes home. Border Force policy is that a device is generally returned within 14 days. Ask which power was being used. Get the officer's name and station in New South Wales. Section 202 of LEPRA requires those particulars. Then write everything down before you drive off. Sign it and date it. Memory fades and signed notes don't. And a note made at 10 at night beats a recollection 11 months later, every single time. If it turns out no lawful basis existed, the argument moves to a courtroom, where Section 138 of the Evidence Act lets a judge exclude improperly obtained evidence, a discretion, not a guarantee, with the prosecution carrying the onus. And the complaint pathways are real, so know which one is yours. In New South Wales, the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission. In Victoria, IBAC. In Queensland, the Crime and Corruption Commission. And for federal agencies, the Commonwealth Ombudsman. A complaint costs you nothing but the time it takes to write, and it creates a record where there wasn't one. 4 doors. The New South Wales Order, the Commonwealth Order, the Queensland Order, the Victorian Order. Only one of them was ever used on the man you just met, and it still took 2 courts and a High Court refusal to settle it. And the words unchanged. I don't consent to unlocking this phone. I'll comply. Is there a court order? This is general information. If a device is seized, the video ends and a lawyer begins. Legal aid exists in every state. Send this to the one in your family who flies out Sunday night, or the parent who'd hand over an unlocked phone just to end the conversation politely because they think that's what a good citizen does, and take the ending you earned. The torch clicking off, the window rising, the radio low, and the phone exactly where it started, face down on the seat beside you, screen dark, opened by nobody but you. But when they don't ask for the phone at all, when they arrive at 10 to 7 holding a warrant for the house and everything inside it, that's a different threshold entirely, with its own sentence. That video's on your screen now.